So many times we've thought that investing in real estate is really far from us. We thought that we had to have thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. But we have a special guest here today to talk to us a little bit more about how we can grow our wealth, our real estate portfolio with simple tools. You know who I am. I am your host, attorney Jamila Moore, the entrepreneur's attorney and business strategist, where I help you protect and set up your businesses. Y'all, it's important to build the empire, but it's even more important to protect your empire. Today, I have with me Nathan Gorham. He is the president and CEO of the Gorham Companies. For over 20 years, he has been developing, building, and managing real estate of diverse use and scale, from large scale mixed use assemblies. Now, I used to do real estate law, y'all, so let me break that down for you a little bit. So, mixed use is when you actually get to have homes and commercial real estate in the same place, right? So, he does it all. He's not just residential, he does commercial as well. um, to family scattered site residential. He's done redevelopment. He's executed on a development and construction of over 5 million square feet of assets. He combines construction expertise, working with premier regional general contractors, development experience, working with national commercial real estate developers, and entrepreneurial experience as principal developer and sponsor of quality affordable housing in Baltimore City. Y'all, we have a real estate legend here sitting in front of us. And so, Nathan, I just want to welcome you to the journey to more. And we're super excited to learn more about what you have to offer. How are you today?
Jamil, I'm great. I'm so thankful to be a part of this community, and so grateful to be a part of the community that you're building, that you're leading as well. Thank you so much for having me on. Um, I'm, you know, I watch your episodes. I've seen your work, and I appreciate what you've done and what you're doing in the business community. And it's just awesome. So I'm glad to be here, glad to be a part, and really grateful to be doing this with you today.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I want to just jump right in because one of the things I had the opportunity a few weeks ago of learning your personal story of how you got into real estate. But I think it'll be important for the audience to kind of know, like, how did you get into real estate? Because most people are like, I can't do it, or I have to save up all of this money. Was that your story?
So no, that was that was not my story. Um, so I think my real estate journey really began with the first property that I purchased, out of college. I came home, was living with my parents, and I had done something crazy, like had company over when I wasn't supposed to at 21 years old, and it became very apparent that I was not going to be able to live at my parents' house indefinitely. So it was time for me to leave. I was 21 years old, and I just had this thought, like, look, it's going to cost me a certain amount to live, whether it's an apartment or a house. Why pay for an apartment when I can buy a house? Especially here in Baltimore, you could really buy a mortgage. You could have a mortgage for less than it did for less than for rent. So I decided to try to purchase a house as the first place that I was going to live out of my parents' house. And I scraped together like a little bit of money. There was an FHA loan, so I only had to come to the table with 3.5%. I didn't even have that, so I was trying to pull money in. And even when I got to the settlement table, I was still short. And I just looked around like with these eyes, like deer in headlight eyes, like I don't know where I'm going to come up with this money. And my dad gave me like a couple $1,000s to kind of get over the hump. And so that was like my first journey into real estate, and I still own it. So this was in 2001, and Jamil, I bought this property in 2001 for $85,000. Right, I still own this property to this day, and now that property is worth 260, 270. So in that time frame, that property has grown in value by like over 200%. and just the annual growth has been like 10% in annual growth. And so you can see like the power of real estate and why it's such a powerful investment vehicle, because of the income growth, of the income potential, the appreciation, um, the ability to like grow your net worth kind of without even thinking about it. So that was really the start of my investment, of my real estate journey. And again, like I said, I still have that property till this day, and that was what got me my start.
Wow, y'all. 85,000 has turned into 260,000
Yes.
over the course of 20 some odd years. And I don't know about you, but I don't know anyone who has been able to save $200,000 over the course of 20 years. And so by investing in real estate, you were able to put yourself into a position at 21, even at 21, you made a decision that radically transformed the wealth that you would have later in your life. And can you just talk to me about the emotions you were feeling at that table and just making this decision? Because I can imagine that so many people on here who may own a home, but they may not own their first investment property, or some people may not own a home at all. What were those feelings like, and how did you just keep mustering the courage to say, "Well, God is going to make a way"?
Um, well, I tell people all the time, like faith, my faith is my superpower. And, um, and I believe that when a word comes, like that's it. It's pretty much settled. And so when pursuing home ownership and pursuing real estate and investment, um, it takes a certain level of patience. It takes a certain level of curiosity, because you know a lot of advice is coming from a lot of different areas. But in me, I was telling myself like, well, why not? Like, why? Let's just see if this works. It was like a, can I get a loan? I don't know, but let me just try and see what happens. And for myself and for so many entrepreneurs and business owners, I believe that that's the mental attitude that a lot of people have, is like, let me just try and see what happens and go until the walls comes up and I can't go any further. And a lot of times, I want to say a lot of times, what stops us is not um, the walls that we get when we actually pursue and try to do something, but it's actually us talking ourselves out of something that we should pursue. So most of the time, like, I would rather try something and not succeed than not try something and succeed at doing nothing. So that was my mentality, and I just kept that same mentality, and I still have that same mentality today. Like, I would rather try and fail than not try and succeed at not doing anything. And that's been my calling card, so to speak, for my entire journey in entrepreneurship.
That is so rich. And I want to lean into this, as I am, a master coach. Let's just call it what it is, right?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
And as a master coach, I get to interact with so many different people. And one thing that I'm noticing that is a gender difference is women are very much more, uh, they're less of a risk taker. And men are more risk takers than women are. And they have this attitude of like, but what happens if I don't try? And so I just want to encourage women to kind of borrow that faith a little bit as you're
Mhm.
going out here and doing things for the first time, whether it's your entrepreneurial efforts or it is purchasing real estate. And so I think that the keys that you unlocked around just my faith is my superpower. I have a shirt line that says prayer is my superpower. So I'm like, I probably need to go ahead and add the faith. So, but it's important because what you're teaching us is like, this is a transferable skill that we could use if we're going into our first real estate venture, if we're going into our first entrepreneurial effort, if we're going into our next leadership effort. We need to have a strong foundation of faith and probably prayer to keep us going no matter what circumstances we may see. And so, this is just rich. And when we
Absolutely.
think about that first property, how many properties have you acquired and probably sold off since then because you made the first attempt?
Right. I can't even count how many properties I've bought and sold, because I was doing flipping. I was flipping houses. I've done, of course, do have a portfolio of homes. Um, so I don't even know how many properties it's been. I know, at one point in time, at one stretch, I probably flipped, I don't know, 15 properties, 15 to 20 properties, in partnership with some high net worth individuals. And then, of course, I had my own properties and then have consulted with people. So it's been a lot of properties have passed, have gone through my fingers, so to speak, or I put my mark on a lot of different assets. But yeah, I think, that concept of being the faith being the superpower and being willing to take risks. Um, I think that's one thing that you know that you have to get used to doing is taking risk. And I think it's weird because a lot of people really are trying to avoid the failure, and which is why they don't take the risks. And even with money, people are trying not to lose the money, right? I think one of the best things that happened to me, and this wasn't through investing in real estate, but this was through investing in stocks. One of the best things that happened to me was I lost a bunch of money doing stocks, investing in stocks. And the reason why it was one of the best things that happened to me was because I realized that losing that money did not like did not break me as an individual, right? It made me say, okay, I lost like, I don't know, 15 grand or something like that, or 20, no, $28,000. I lost $28,000 doing a stock play. Um, and I was like, oh man. And I felt like crushed or whatever a little bit. But then I was like, you know what? Okay. And I got past it, but it got me used to making risky decisions. And so I wasn't so risk averse, and I think a lot of times, sometimes I tell people you need to go out there and lose some money sometimes. Just not because not because you're trying to lose money, but you lose money to understand that look, you can go through these things, and these setbacks, and having the setback itself is not necessarily a negative. It's what you gain from it. You're not. It does not. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't define you. All of those things that I think people focus on when coming to the point where they can make a decision on being an investor or being a business owner or whatever. But understanding that, look, whatever it is, the failure, all of that, like you can make it through it, and you will get stronger. You will get better. You will grow in your knowledge base. Um, it might be something that God is growing in you, to help you manage whatever's coming next. So that's been something that I continue to hold on to, as I go through.
Wow. So he's given us not only like real estate skills, he's given us life skills that we could really just take on and really think through in our own lives. Like, what risks are you taking? And you just nudge something in me. Like, every time I get a big open door in my life, it's because I take a risk
Mhm.
on putting myself out there in a different way, putting myself out there to be rejected, putting myself out there for someone to tell me no. And it has literally unlocked so many different doors. And this most recent risk, I was just like, God, is this going to be my life? Just out here asking these questions. And, but I think when you go back to having that strong foundation of faith and prayer and time with God, if he is leading you, then you know that if you lose something, you lost nothing,
Oh
because
yeah,
what you gained
that's a
was what
word.
you're supposed to learn.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
And so if we take that approach, we would stop um we would stop coming to the place where we're always needing God to do something for us, because he's equipped us to do those things if we're willing to step outside of our logic, step outside of our knowledge, and go with his word and
Hmm.
whatever his word is for you to do. If you quote unquote fail, it was because it was ordained for you to fail. Right? It's not going to break you.
Right.
It's just a different ordination, right? And I think sometimes we don't want to be in this position of discomfort, but and I don't know why I'm going down this path, but here we
All
are
right, we here now. We
now. But many are the afflictions of the righteous. And so if you're in a place where you're feeling like you're in failure, you're in a place where you're like, this doesn't feel good, you're probably in right standing with God.
mm, mm,
But
yes.
you don't want to feel those things. And I remember saying this at some point. Some people think that when things are going good, that means God is in the midst.
Hmm.
But that could literally mean that the enemy has set you up in a trap, because you
Mm,
were supposed to be in a season of discomfort, growing, being stretched, having that enlarged territory that everybody likes to talk about with Jabaz,
hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That enlarged territory doesn't feel good.
Right. Right.
And what have you found on your real estate journey when you were going through those moments of enlargement?
Yes. So I have a story. I have tons of stories, of course. Um, but I think one of the so there was a time that I was working on a multifamily property, and this was so I had lost my job. So I had a regular paying job, okay, and I had lost my job because of the economic downturn of like 2010 or whatever. And I had decided that I was going to branch out, right? Instead of going back to work for someone else, I was going to run my own company and do my own real estate development. And I had purchased this property a few years prior, and I was trying to um, convert this property into a 3 unit property. So it was a huge townhome in Baltimore, and I was converting it into 3 units. And because I had let somebody else I had tried to do I had tried to sell it to somebody under with seller financing, but they never went through with the transaction, even though they were sending me like mortgage payments. So it was like a seller financing type of situation that had not been yet ratified. But during that time, it had started collecting a lot of fines from the city because the person wasn't taking care of the property. So I'm trying to work on this property. Jamila, I had $0 in my pocket. Like I was scraping together money to try to fix this property up. Of course, I'm there working on it myself. I've got contractors I've got to pay. And the fines that I didn't know were on the property, all of a sudden they came all at one time. And I got this letter in the mail and I had to go to this hearing, right? And I went to this hearing and they were going to slap me with like $5,000 to $6,000 in fines for stuff that hadn't happened at the property, conditions of the property, and things like that that had happened without my knowledge. And I had no money, and this was very kind of early on. And I remember sitting at the table in front of the person, the the judge or whatever at the time, and she started talking about my kids. Like she was like, "You have children, don't you?" And I was like, and I'm telling you, Jamila, I'm not a crier, but I literally broke down and cried in front
Mhm.
of this person because I was really at my wits end dealing with the stress of the property and flipping and turning converting this property. The fact that I was out on my own, so that I'm I'm killing what I eat, or I'm eating what I
Yeah.
kill. And I'm sitting here and I'm in front of this woman and I'm thinking about my kids and what they're looking and what they're and covering them, you know. And I started crying in front of this person, and she saw me crying, and I don't know what it was, but she was just like, you know what, you know what, you know what, and she just started writing down. Um, she just started crossing off amounts. She just started crossing them out, and um, and every time it was like, so by the time she finished crossing out stuff, like my eyes was wet. I was like bawling at this hearing. And by the time she finished, she had written down my fines from like $5,000 to like $45. And I was like, and she was like, "Can you pay this? Can you pay this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I could pay it. I could pay it." And I just and I knew that God had done that for me. You know what I'm saying? And
Yes.
I don't even, you know, and that I've had experiences like that throughout my journey where I've felt the hand of the Lord like moving me through a transaction or a development or whatever it is. And it has been um, something that I continuously rely on, knowing that He's not going to put me in a position where He's not going to be able to sustain me or to bring me through. Um, and so while I was talking and while I was talking about that story, it took me back to that place, and I actually forgot your question. so,
No,
so go ahead.
it's perfectly fine. I think that the story was probably what needed to be brought out, and just understanding that, you know, whenever you are going to build in terms of taking on the biblical mandate to build a legacy and leave an inheritance for your children's children, it's not going to be easy all the time. It's one of those things where there will be ups where you got the I got over to
Right,
like 180 in equity on this. But then there are going to be times where it's like, gosh, if you don't get me out of this, I do not know how I am going to get out of this.
right,
And I think that's one of the reasons why we have to move to a place where we lean into the experts in certain areas, and we first make the investment in and let God lead you on who to go to. I'm gonna say that again and
right,
again, to help guide you through certain things so that we could lessen the amount of all the setbacks. Because it's not that we won't have that setback or we won't experience it, but it is helpful when we have someone who has been there that can say, at least avoid these 10 things.
right,
You know, that's one of the things I try and tell business owners all the time. Like, you want to get your attorney in when you're first starting this business because you want to avoid this rather than get there and say, oh, right. And so
absolutely, absolutely,
when people are investing in real estate, they get to a place where they say, because you hear this term all the time. The quickest way to wealth is real estate. And so you're like, bet this is something I know I have to do. But then you go out it and you do it alone and you make all the mistakes.
right.
And so, how would you help someone who is, or what are the two things you can tell a person who is looking to invest in their first home? What would be the first two things they need to do?
Uh, so of course it always starts with goals. You know, getting crystal clear on your goals, your investment goals, um, and that's, you know, from, do I need some like regular cash flow? Am I looking for an immediate payout? Am I looking to generate some generational type wealth? Like, what am I looking to do and why? Like, getting crystal clear on that will inform the strategy. So, you get your goal and then you get your strategy based off of your goal. So those are the two things, is like making sure that your strategy that you're going to utilize aligns with the goal that you have. So you're not, if you're talking about generating um, passive income on an ongoing basis, you're not looking at properties that are um, more so designed for flipping, or vice versa. If you're looking for um, some tax benefits or things like that, that you align your strategy to meet your goal, and a lot of that you need good people. I think Pastor Darius Daniel says, you don't go as far as your dream, you go as far as your team. So you got to have your team to help you develop a strategy that really suits your goal. And so those are the two things I would say: is figure out the goal and to get crystal clear on the goal, and then come up with a really well defined, structured strategy for achieving that goal. And so there's tons of steps within those two processes, but those are the two things I would say are most important.
Listen, y'all. I don't know about y'all, but I didn't even know there were different type of real estate goals. I thought it was just get the property. So the fact that you need to have a specific real estate goal
Right.
means that you do this with a coach. Don't do this alone. You do this with a coach because you want to go far with the right team. Don't
Right.
just go. You don't flow. I'm gonna say don't flow with your dream. Fly with your
All
team.
right. I like it. I like it.
And so can you that was super helpful, and I want to backtrack just a little bit because I got ahead of myself listening to all of the great things you were saying. But why is it even important for us to look into the vehicle of real estate when we're talking about expanding our finances, expanding our wealth, expanding, our ownership?
Uh, so so in that first example of my that first property that I purchased, right, you can see some of the power of real estate with just the appreciation, right? The appreciation and value means that over those 20 years, my net worth, like the value of my asset versus my liabilities, while that mortgage for the $85,000 initial payment was being brought down, the value of that property was going up. And so my net worth grew just from that one purchase by $160,000 plus over the years, over those 20 years. And that was without me doing anything, right? I didn't have to do anything except pay the mortgage. If I just lived there by myself, didn't do anything investment wise, I would have my net worth would have increased by over $160,000 in 20 years, right? Um, Now, when you talk about rent, so when I moved out of that property, I rented it out, right? So not only was my net worth increasing because the value of the property was increasing, but I was also gaining cash flow from that property while the net worth was increasing. So I was getting cash flow, and then somebody else was paying off the mortgage, right? So all of this was free net worth appreciation that was coming to me. Now, a really powerful thing is also, you know, I can pass that asset on to my children, you know, at some point. And so not only does it impact my net worth, right, but it impacts the net worth of generations that come behind me because they can take, possession of that. And usually it can happen tax free, talk to your tax professional, of course. But usually you can pass real estate on to your heirs through a trust or what have you. And that worth passes through generation and grows, generationally. And that's just from one little, townhome in Baltimore City. You know what I'm saying? So you can imagine if you had a portfolio of properties where that same concept or that same those all of those same things were happening across a portfolio of properties. And so I tell people, like, look, especially in this country. So I'm gonna take it here because we're here, but especially in this country where you know our community has been marginalized, and there's the communities that we lived in have been disinvested, and we have not been able to actually own property and own real estate. And then the property, and we've had real estate and so much stuff taken from us. Like, I feel like not only is it a good investment vehicle, I feel like I owe it to my ancestors. And I feel like, I quite honestly, like, Jamil, I'm gonna say this, and it might be you, but if I feel like all Black people need to own real estate. Quite honestly, like, you owe it. You owe it to your ancestors. You owe it to your kids. You owe it to people who are coming behind you. You owe it to people who've gone before you, um, to own part of what we've built in this nation. And um, so that's like the value of it is, it can't be overstated. If you look at 90% of the wealthiest people in in the world, a lot of their assets are real estate. And it's not a mistake. It's a hedge against inflation. Um, it's a continual tool for appreciation. It's a tax benefit. It generates income for you. It generates passive income. Do you know less than 20% of all American households have passive income? And real estate is one of the best ways to generate passive income. And less than 6% of African American households have passive income of any kind, and the median figure for passive income is $4,200 a year. So 20% of the population in total, the median passive income is $4,200 annually. So you can imagine, like, your financial picture if you had some passive income that was being generated through real estate. It just makes too much sense, and there's so many ways to get it, because there's so many, you know seller financing, creative financing strategies. There's so many ways. It's like a very low barrier to entry, in order to be able to purchase real estate, that I don't it doesn't make sense why we don't do it. Um, so that's part of my reasons why.
No, I think that's so rich, and you got me over here like, let's go, Jamila. Let's go. Like, stop playing games
Let's
with
go.
your future. But no, I will be a little bit vulnerable here and say, like, I've saved up money for a house to have my 3.5% FHA,
Yes.
like at least two times in life. But I've just transitioned so much and done so many things that it never came to fruition. But I think you just agitated me in a sense back into action in that way. And to think of things a little differently than I probably have before. And one of the things that you said was like, we
So
owe it to our ancestors.
right.
We owe
So
it to ourselves. Wait, what you got to
all right.
say?
So I got some. So here's another thing. So technology has increased the level of opportunity so much, right? Because a lot of people talk about, like, I'm kind of in this weird place that I don't want to buy a place or whatever. But I have a good friend of mine who does short-term Airbnb rentals, and I have some good friends of mine as well who don't own the property. They rent the property, right? And then they sublet it, or they get a short-term rental to backfill their property, and they still use real estate to generate returns for them. So there's so many ways out here to do it and to utilize this vehicle, that it's it's no excuse. It's no excuse. It's so many opportunities. Let's go. Let's go. My people, let's go. It is time.
My people, let's go. It's time. I mean, he just dropped some game right here. I'm like, where I live in the most expensive state in the country. And I'm like, this, I got in during the pandemic. The appreciation on this apartment is a little bit more. So maybe I just need to go on ahead and move out
Let's go.
and find some unique strategies here. I'm with you, Nathan. I'm with you.
Let's
I'm
go.
with you. Um, but to your point around ownership, and we owe it to ourselves, and the marginalization of minorities in this country, more specifically blacks, I have that same conviction when it comes to our intellectual property And most
Yes.
people don't think about the ideas, the programs, the book names, the business names as property. And so, one of the things I feel like God is really teaching me about, he was like, when people don't purchase and own their intellectual property, what
Mm.
they're doing is renting a place
Mm.
with the potential to be evicted out of it
Mm.
without notice when
That's
you
it.
don't. And so, like, when people don't own their intellectual property by trademarking, when people don't own their intellectual property by copywriting, that means that you don't really own your business.
Right. That's powerful.
And so, if you don't have ownership, you don't have rights.
Right.
And so, if you don't have rights, what are you doing all of this for? And so, when I say that, like, protect your business, protect your intellectual property, this is the thing that I'm talking about. Because if we just trace what's happened with the African American community, so many of our ideas were stolen.
Right.
Now we're at a place where we're giving them away because we don't want to invest in protection.
Right. Right. And it's
So,
powerful for us because we define culture. Like we define what's
yes.
what's great, what's cool. We put the flavor in this country. And it's like if we don't have protections on what we bring, then it's like, we are opening ourselves up to vulturization. So we got, we got to protect it, and that's why I value your contribution to the business community so much, is because our stuff, our name, image, and likeness has been utilized without our benefit, for so long. Our ideas, it's just so you doing God's business out here, Jamila, and I appreciate you. I know we all appreciate you.
I appreciate you for saying that. I really, really do, because it is definitely a faith journey filled with highs and lows, big wins, and
Mm,
many tears. Like,
right.
the unspoken rules or things that they don't talk about with entrepreneurship. And so you really have to be tenacious to go
Mm,
after the things that God has for you, right? And that means acquiring property, that
mhm,
means thinking creatively. And so, how could you push someone who says, I have literally no money
mm.
saved up, and I heard Nathan Gorham, and I am going to make a commitment to invest in real estate within a year? What do they need to start doing today?
Um, Start learning. Your knowledge is going to be invaluable, and so you can learn, on your own. Of course, all the podcasts, there's so much information out here. So it can get kind of muddy, but, also try to find a person, find a group, find a team that knows what they're doing that you can learn from. So the first thing is like your knowledge base, right? And growing your knowledge so that um, what you're doing as you're going down this path. And then a lot of it is mindset too. Understanding what real estate is, what it isn't. That it's not get rich quick necessarily. Um, that there are pitfalls, but having the knowledge and getting your mindset right. As far as the risk that we talked about, you know, a lot of people who are so risk averse, it's difficult for them to push in that direction. So getting somebody to kind of coach you through that entire process of like getting comfortable with taking the risk, but understand that the risk that you don't take, right, you're setting yourself up for the other things that are working against you. For instance, we talk about like retirement, right? And so they say like the average person who wants to retire, like the 401k. People talk about 401k. So you want to retire, and they say when you retire, you need to make a certain amount times your income. That you're like, if you're 60, you're supposed to make 10 times. You're supposed to have 10 times your income saved in your 401k, right? So if you make $60,000 and 60 years old, you need to have $600,000 in your 401k. How many people have $600,000 in their 401k, right? So they're giving you a they're giving you the plan, and you're already failing. Like, we're already failing at what we think we need to do. Um, and so not choosing another path is basically signing up for the inevitable failure, because you're not going to have enough money. Like, not choosing to invest is signing up for a certain outcome. And once you realize that if I don't make some changes, if I don't do something different, if I don't figure out a way to grow my income without having to necessarily me invest all my time to do it, if I don't figure out some way to do this, like, I'm stuck. I am stuck. And I think when you kind of look at, your financial picture, some people feel like they have security, but I'm gonna tell you, I remember coming home on the train. I used to go to work, it would be dark outside, and I would come home and it would be dark outside. I was working hard, for a developer. And then the crisis hit. And next thing you know, I was coming home on the train. I was trying to think in my mind what I was going to tell my wife at the time, like what happened, like how, like I lost my job, and the conversation. I'm rehearsing in my mind all the things that I'm going to say, right? And so there is no guarantee, signing up for, working a job or what have you. There's no guarantees. So I would say the best protection you have against um, future adversity or what have you is to try something different. Is to do something new. Is to try to invest and to grow your investment portfolio. And to, I say real estate is the way, um, but to do something different. Like, you've got to do it. Otherwise, you're just signing up for the inevitable, which, you know, once you look at that, like with your eyes wide open, you'll see you got to do something different. Like, what we're doing, what I was doing at the time, it was not going to work. Like, I had $50,000 in my 401k, and I was like 30 years old, and I knew I was going to have like $1 million in my 401k to be able to retire comfortably. It wasn't happening. It was not happening. Like, how was I going to save $1 million? So I'm telling you, real estate is a good opportunity to be able to switch some things around and to make up some time, because that's the biggest thing that's our enemy. Like, when you don't have an investment, time is not your friend. When you're investing, time is working for you, and time is working for your investment and for your value. So that's the biggest thing I would say.
Y'all, I know you probably are heading over to the Gorham companies right now. You're signing up for an initial consultation. You're following him on Instagram. You're following him on YouTube, because you are going to take action today, right? You want to make sure that if the very, like, he gave you your first tool, whether or not you have funds or not, is to learn. And so he has the methods for you to learn right here on the screen for you, right at the Gorham companies everywhere, IG, YouTube, website. And so I don't think that we really understood the depth and the wealth of information that is available to us if we decide to go after real estate opportunities, and what that can not only do to transform our lives, but to transform the generations that are to come. And so, on behalf of the audience, I just want to say thank you so much, and that you have a serious moral obligation to bring this in front of as many people as possible, because it is so rich, and you're going to help people dig themselves out of poverty. And sometimes we think of poverty as a physical place, but it's actually a mindset.
Hmm.
And so you are going to help people dig themselves out of that mindset, just like I'm helping people dig themselves out of that mindset, out of that place to really start and build profitable businesses the right way. And be able to build passive income and generational wealth through the vehicle of entrepreneurship. That is literally my mission. And a lot of people
That's
talk
it.
to me about it. And I'm like, no, I'm going to get you structure for wealth. And so that's why you have the two of us here with this divine connection that has come from the Lord Himself. And so we just want to say thank you. And to the rest of y'all, we will see y'all soon. I know y'all head into both of those websites. I know you're getting there, you're getting your initial consultation set up, and you are ready to roll because if we're going to really move, if we really want this JBAS life, we have to take action. Stop thinking and move.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, y'all. See you soon.